So we continue the game Lasker Tarrasch. This is part 2 because part 1 was already 20 minutes by move 14, showing that Tartakower did a great job in analysis, and that can tell us a lot on how we should analyze our games. So I will repeat the first 14 moves on this new video because maybe someone doesn't care to watch part 1. e4, knight f6, this opening, the Alekhine defense, was analyzed in the book previously for many pages, and now he gives a game as an example. e5, knight d5, c4, knight b6, d4, d6, f4, d takes f5, f takes e5, knight c6, bishop e3, and bishop f5. Obviously I'm going faster because all this move, this series of moves were analyzed in the previous video. Knight c3, e6, knight f3, and bishop b4. Bishop d3 in the previous video we show why it's a mistake. Bishop g4 the refutation. Bishop e2 is the move that one must play. Then we have bishop takes f3, g takes f3, and then we have queen h4, bishop f2, and queen f4. At this point we had a big analysis in the previous video about the move queen c1 found by Tartakower and other people that analyze the game, but Lasker played a very interesting move, which is rook g1. A clever idea, harassing the opponent, the g7 pawn, while putting as bait this pawn h2. And so this is a distraction because at this point black should try to destroy the white center. But a pawn is a pawn, so if someone is greedy, they can fall for it, right? So how did Tarrasch continue? He castle, long castle, but here it says that probably he should have played h5. Why h5 is important? Because it takes under control the square g4, okay? And in case, also here, there is a good analysis made by Tartakower, because he practically says, if he takes, you don't care, right? You play this, and of course here there is a plethora of different answers. White could answer queen d2, and here it's also analyzed bishop g3. So let's go on bishop g3, okay? And what do you do here? Well, it seems the best continuation for Tartakower, so we are speaking of nearly 100 years ago, was queen e3. Obviously some of this continuation might be better check with a computer, that's not a joke. Bishop f2, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, queen takes c3, king f1, knight d4, knight takes d4, okay, and rook c1. Now there is a very interesting move. Knight takes e2, rook takes c3, rook takes d1, king takes e2, and rook d7. At this point, Tartakower ends his analysis, but by the way was kind of long because we are speaking 7 moves. 7 moves, I don't know, they are kind of difficult to visualize when playing OTB, but at this point Tartakower says, well, at least black has a pawn advantage, a good pawn advantage. Which is true, but not only. In reality, if you think about it, there are some other advantages. For example, these are isolated, so that's a target that black can follow up. And of course, this is advanced, this is not, so maybe you could create a pass pawn at a certain point. I don't know, I think there are a lot of interesting possibilities in the position, but yet it's still all to play, so the pawn advantage might not be enough if one is not really good at converting the material advantage into a win. With that said, let's return to the game, because there are in fact good analysis made by Tartakower, and I don't want to spoil them all. I mean, buy the book because it's just $5, so everybody can buy it, right? And you can see it on your own board. Because obviously if I make every video like 15 minutes long, I don't think anybody will see it. Okay, so let me return back. Okay, we were in this position and black castle on the queen side, and then of course there were a lot of analysis made by Tartakower to see if there were other possibilities. So let's castle queen side. White continues with rook g4, so we see why it was important to play h5, right? Queen takes h2, and this is what Tartakower was saying. He said, you see, black got distracted from destroying the white center to take a pawn that honestly maybe is not so useful, right? Rook h4, queen g2, bishop f1, queen g5, and queen c2. So why white played queen c2? Because at this point there was this threat, knight takes e5. You cannot take back because the rook will take the queen. So that's why you have to play queen c2, okay? And now black played h5, but once more you need to attack the center, because the center is what gives you an advantage. Controlling the center, having more pieces in the center. So f6 should have been considered. And here of course Tartakower made even 4 different possible moves that white could have played against f6, which are f4, e takes f6, bishop h3 attacking the e6 pawn that became obviously loose. So as you can see, a simple game by 2 top players of the 1900 is still a lot of work in terms of analysis, if you are serious that you want to improve. If you just think that magically watching the games or replaying it over the board you will become a grandmaster, okay, I'm sorry, that's not gonna happen. So I understand the frustration of those who say, but I bought a book of games and I watched them and I didn't feel an improvement. Yeah, you didn't feel an improvement because you didn't do the hard work of saying what happens if black plays this, and then you have to create your own analysis line. If you always think that someone will cook for you the food, I'm sorry, you are going to be disappointed. Not only, how does that work in a real game? In a real game over the board, I'm sorry, you needed to create, to think maybe this is better than this. And if you don't do it, I'm sorry, how can you improve? So yes, replaying the games is very, very useful, but you must do your own homework, okay? So that's the most important part. H5, Rook D1. So now keep in mind that he cannot castle because the queen is controlling the square C1. But also remember that the rule is that the king cannot go over any square, because the castling is a move by the king on any squares that is controlled by the enemy. So that's kind of important, okay? So that's why he played Rook D1. But just to make an example, we have seen, or maybe I hope you have seen, many of Kasparov game, or all this top player game, when they become top player, even Morphy. If one leaves the king a little too much in the center, he would find a way to make him pay and lose the game. So here we have this king in the center, but it seems that black is not able to win the game, to open the position, maybe sacrificing something in order to attack that king. I still didn't watch all the game, so I'm ignorant of it like you are, guys. But that's the beauty, okay? So let's see what happened after Rook D1, Queen H6. But once more, do your homework. Why this move works or doesn't work, okay? Tartakower thinks that this is the move that should be played, okay? Instead of this. So, up to you guys. A3, Bishop E7, Rook H3, Bishop G5. And once more, instead of Bishop G5, maybe F6, take, and so you are still attacking the center. I don't know. As you can see, it's interesting. The situation is interesting. Queen E4, and finally, he arrives at the move F6. And here Tartakower says, now that all of the white pieces have found good posts, this break has lost much of its effect. Black plays this not to his heart's content, but rather under the belief that the new disposition of the white order of battle demands a brilliant operation of his own. Instead of this, he said, this is the move that should have been considered, okay? But he didn't. And there is the analysis. Obviously, Tartakower always support his move that he suggests with some analysis, okay? So let's see, after Queen E4, F6, E takes F6, Queen takes F6. And here it says, long live methodology. Black is in fact preparing a decisive strategic mistake. He says that instead of that, this should have been considered, no? But probably he didn't consider it because he didn't want to lose the pawn. And here let's see why, because I believe this is honestly the move everybody would like to play, right? He says King B8, and then after Bishop E3, Bishop G5, Bishop takes G5, I don't know, I think there is a mistake here. Because after Bishop takes G5, he loses the queen here, right? I don't understand. So let's see. Let me check. sorry, I made a mistake. He practically said this, that the position was this, after queen takes e6 and king b8, and then he says, instead of that move, he says bishop e3, bishop g5, takes, this would be fatal for white. I don't think this analysis is good enough. With all due respect for Tartakower, I think the real problem that we didn't see maybe is the following. Let's see that we are here, okay? And he has taken here, this. Now the problem is that black can play this. So where do you put your queen? No? So if he does this, I don't know. Probably the situation is bad because he can give check, right? And then after check, he can take on d4, he can do some stuff. So that's why he said it was fatal for white. So forgive me, it was move 24, he considered queen takes d6 and bishop takes bishop e3 as possible moves that white could have played. But let's return back a second and see what he actually played, okay? Okay, this was the position, and instead of taking with the bishop, he took with the queen. And now white plays this because then he can take in some ways, because there is enough protection to his king, but black plays this, queen f5. And here Tartakower says, Lasker has speculated correctly psychologically. Black accepts his opponent's gracious offer and hurries to carry out this routine exchange of queens, based on its promise of theoretical advantages because he has no clear alternative at his disposal. Utter misjudgment of the position. The desired endgame in which the pawns mechanically roll forward like clockwork never arises. Instead, his kingside pawn majority gets stopped dead in his tracks, while white, thanks to his reinforced center and excellent bishop pair, obtain good chances. It was therefore much more appropriate to indulge in a peace battle and draw up some plan of attack, like, for example, knight e7, f5, or knight g6. So that's what Tartakower proposes, okay? So after queen f5, queen takes f5, e takes f5, we are in this position, and here we can see the point that Tartakower was trying to make. There is clearly a pawn majority on the king side, but white has this incredible bishop pair that is able to stop them, okay? So this is not an advantage. Black misjudged that point, that he thinks one of these become a pass pawn, and in order to be stopped, white needs to sacrifice a piece, but that's not what's gonna happen, okay? So that's the real problem. Let's see, Tartakower at this point has a diagram and says, for the phase, although down material, white takes over the offensive following the exchange of queens. So what do you think white will play in this moment? Because that's what you need to ask yourself when you want to learn from watching a game. I'm white in this moment, I pause for a minute, 1 minute, and I say, what would I play if I would be Mr. Lasker? Lasker played bishop d3, attacking, okay? Black defends, g6, and again, knight e2. As you can see, practically he has a good defense, he has a good way to keep the enemy blocked. Okay, let's see what Tartakower says. White has seen through his opponent's clever defensive scheme. If instead of that he would have played this, it would be a mistake. Why? Because of this. Take, 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 and take. Okay? With a decisive advantage for black. Now black feels compelled to further calcify the pawn position on the king side. How? Let me show it to you with the original position. Okay, so we saw bishop d3, g6, and knight e2 instead of a mistake, rook g3, okay? Knight e2. How does black continue here? With h4. The dark side of this move consists in the fact that it condemns two officers, the h rook and the g5 bishop, to permanent sentry duty of this pawn, right? Much better was therefore knight e7. So, no, sorry, knight e7. Okay, since nothing has come of the attack on d4 anyway. So obviously, when they tell you that attack is not working, then you need to change strategy and find somewhere else to go, right? Otherwise, you're wasting time. Okay, how does white continue here? Obviously, white continues with f4, bishop f6, b4, gaining space, right? Gaining space on the queen side, and obviously this is where white could actually create a pass pawn. King b8. The threat of a capture on d4 has at long last become acute. However, white has had the time to take the necessary precaution and to transform black's proud war horses into half-crippled pets. This is the nice thing of this book, that he has all these kind of funny ways to describe the position. d5, knight e7, king f1, and knight b c8. With this, black hopes to force the destruction of the enemy center in conjunction with his subsequent move. But he also says the immediate c6 it seems is not working, and here he gives a long analysis. Let's watch after this what happens. b5, so he's actually trying to fight for c6. And here it says an attacking and defensive move at once. White's pawn mass has now become extremely ominous. And here black played c6. One usually does not alter his own plans gladly, but black should have reckoned with the new circumstances and foregone this break. His position is certainly very squeezed. And if he plays this, obviously he creates some dangerous odds, okay? Maybe it was better a wait-and-see approach, and it was better to play knight b6 or knight d6 in order for the knights to possibly hop forward. This is what Tartakower suggests instead of a move c6 that he thinks is a mistake. And here there is a diagram, and it says, concluding phase. All paths are now open for white's bishops and rooks. Black gets steamroll. So it's your turn. You are white. What would you play in this position? And white played b takes c6, b takes c6, rook b1. Okay, clearly now it's open season for hunting the enemy king. King a8, knight d4. and bishop takes d4. Now practically the game is going toward the end. So here there are some other possibilities like c takes d5. Tartakower look for them, but let's see how it ends. Bishop takes d4, rook h7, probably trying to protect this, bishop e5, knight d6, c5, knight b7, d6, wow, knight d5, rook c1, because now you have a protected pass pawn, rook f8, bishop a6, and now there is knight f6. So what would you play if you were white here? Okay, this is kind of important. What would you play if you were white? White continue with bishop takes f6, rook takes f6, rook e3. Obviously, now the problem is that there is a checkmate here, because if you play this, takes, and you cannot escape, right? So that's why it's starting to become a problem. Rook f8, protecting the back rank. Rook c e1, again renewing the threat of checkmate. Rook h8, d7, king b8, it's over. Rook e8, boom. King c7, and bishop takes b7. And this is the end of the game, and black resign. So imagine how things went wrong from, in reality, the strategic mistake of wanting to exchange the queens and then opening the position which was advantageous for white. I hope you enjoyed this game from this wonderful book. We will watch more games from this book, because I honestly think every chess player should have a chance to read the games commented and annotated by Tartakower, because it was, like Nimzowitsch, an exponent of that type of school, this hypermodern school, and it will teach us a lot about chess in our journey to chess improvement. Thank you very much for watching.